This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The World Health Organization says 85% of coronavirus new cases in the past 24 hours are in Europe and the United States. And in Africa, 43 countries across the continent report over 2,000 cases. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, only on CGTN. I'm Karen Roberts, live in Nairobi. Rama Nayan joins us now with all your business headlines.
Thank you very much, Karen. Here's what's coming up in the course of the hour. South Africa to finalise a stimulus package as the COVID-19 pandemic is threatening Africa's most industrialised economy. And we'll explore how businesses in Uganda are changing their logistics chains as the pandemic is forcing millions to stay at home. The details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Karen.
Thank you very much, Rama. We begin with some of the latest global figures on the coronavirus pandemic. 393,000 cases have been confirmed in over 180 countries and regions. The World Health Organization says 85% of new cases in the past 24 hours are in Europe and the United States. The US reported the highest number of new cases on Monday, and for the first time, its daily number of fatalities was in triple digits. Italy has the highest number of deaths, reporting over 6,000. More than 63,000 cases have been reported there. Spain has more than 39,000 confirmed cases. Iran has over 1,900 deaths. Imported cases on the Chinese mainland hit a record high on Monday, bringing the total to over 400. Hubei province reports one new locally transmitted case in its capital, Wuhan. Nearly 90% of patients in China have now recovered. Well, in Africa, over 2,000 cases of COVID-19 have been reported in 43 countries. Let's now take a look at the numbers by region. Northern Africa has the highest number of confirmed cases. Infections in Egypt have jumped to 366 after 39 new infections were reported. 5 more people have died in the country, including 4 Egyptians and an Indian. Algeria comes in second with 29 new cases, bringing the total to 230. Authorities say that so far 17 people have died from the disease. Morocco has 143 cases, reporting 4 deaths and 5 recovered patients. A 1-month state of medical emergency has been declared until the 20th of April. In Western Africa, Burkina Faso has the highest number of cases in the region with 99 cases. 7 new cases of infection have been detected across Senegal, bringing the total number to 86 cases. Senegalese President Macky Sall declared a state of emergency, along with a curfew from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. Ghana has also recorded a second death from coronavirus with 25 new infections, bringing the total count in the country to 52. In Eastern Africa, Kenya's cases have jumped to 25 after 9 new cases were detected on Tuesday. Out of the 9, 7 are Kenyans and 2 are foreigners. Rwanda maintains the highest number of cases in the region with 36 infections. In Central Africa, Cameroon numbers are up to 72 from a previous count of 56. The Democratic Republic of Congo also saw a rise with 45 now confirmed. The number of confirmed coronavirus cases in South Africa has spiked to 554, with 152 new infections confirmed. The country is the worst affected in Africa so far. Well, most African countries have suspended flights, closed schools, and banned large gatherings to contain COVID-19. Many are taking a close look at the confinement policies imposed in China and now Europe. CGTN's Tuli Shabalala has more.
Cameroon recently closed its land, air and sea borders indefinitely. International flights were grounded and transport restricted. Schools and universities have been shut down to stem the spread of the coronavirus.
It's been 2 or maybe a month since we heard about coronavirus causing havoc in China. Since we are now getting reports that the virus has entered Cameroon, it's risky for children to go to school. This is because when kids play together, they might be infected by their friends who are already carrying the virus. So it's totally okay to suspend schools until a vaccine can be found which will prevent transmission, especially amongst children.
When they go see they don't get the drugs the way.
The government in Cameroon says movement should be strictly limited to essential travel. Traders who sell at what were busy parts in town are concerned about losing a substantial part of their income, especially if the lockdown goes on for too long.
If the entire country shuts down and I am unable to work here for some time, then I will be badly affected. I need to work here every day in order to sustain my family. Since other nations have ordered for a total shutdown of activities, I fear that this virus can push our government to take the same measures. At the moment, our only hope is that God will help us put an end to the virus, because now we are helpless.
We will not get no other power again. We reach God's own power.
Bars, restaurants and makeshift drinking establishments will have to close down after 6 p.m. The fear of the coronavirus spreading in a country where the health systems are vulnerable and overstretched is worrying many people.
I think this makes a lot of sense because with the COVID-19 that is going around, we do not know where it might come from. So by doing this, the government is trying to protect its people.
Liberia confirmed its first COVID-19 case on March 16th. The government's measures to contain the spread of the virus include 14 days quarantine for travelers coming from countries affected by the virus. They have also discouraged large gatherings.
So what the government is saying?
They shouldn't use this virus to make money for themselves. Let them be clear with the information. Then we will know if we have to use preventative measures or if we carry on as we are.
Let them be clear with the information.
Liberia was one of 3 West African countries worst hit by the Ebola epidemic in 2014. Weak surveillance systems and poor public health infrastructure contributed to the difficulty surrounding the containment of Ebola. People in the country also didn't believe Ebola existed, and it's the same with COVID-19.
I do believe that COVID-19 is here because during the time of Ebola, the same thing happened and Liberians said it was a lie. They said it was former President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf who brought the sickness. So the sickness is in this country.
Traders here are some of those who are skeptical of the government. And some citizens are not wearing their face masks, despite them being sold on the streets. Tuli Shabalala, CGTN.
Zimbabwe has closed all of its borders, allowing only goods through to limit the spread of COVID-19, which claimed its first life in the country on Monday. Broadcast journalist Zororo Makamba succumbed to the coronavirus after testing positive on Saturday. Farai Wakatuya has that story from Harare.
Zororo Makamba returned from New York in March, exhibiting flu-like symptoms. His condition worsened rapidly because he was still recovering from a lung tumor operation last year. His death has raised questions about Zimbabwe's preparedness following claims by his family that the designated isolation center in Harare was ill-equipped. The government insists it's ready to handle the pandemic. On Monday, it announced additional restrictions, including closing down borders and limiting public gatherings to 50. The measures are coming too late, according to some.
They should have begun by closing the borders first before anything else, because we did not have this disease here. It's been imported by people who came from abroad.
Efforts to promote social distancing may not succeed due to challenges Zimbabweans have to face on a daily basis. For instance, queues. This one is for people trying to get birth certificates, but there are countless others elsewhere for cash at the bank and to catch public transport. It was business as usual at a teeming bus terminus in Harare, with only a few people here taking heed of the preventive measures that have been put in place.
There are water taps and hand sanitizer dispensers that have been made available, so those are at least helping to prevent the spread.
There have been calls for a national shutdown, but that could hurt many in a largely informal economy.
How will we get by if they shut down businesses and borders and ask us all to stay home? We are struggling, so we'll always leave home to try to earn something. The government should ask donors to assist with food handouts. That way we can stay at home.
Zimbabwe's finance minister has set aside funds to cushion those socially affected by the coronavirus outbreak. It's unlikely that he'll be able to assist all of them, given the far-reaching impact many here fear the disease will have. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Ugandan authorities are tracing all the people who travelled from Dubai in the last 2 weeks following the confirmation of 8 more cases of COVID-19. This brings the total number of cases to 9. The Ministry of Health says all 9 cases are Ugandan nationals who arrived in the country from Dubai. Isabel Nakira now reports.
Health officials in Uganda say they have all the details of travellers who arrived in the country from Dubai in the last 2 weeks. 84 of these passengers were on the same Ethiopian Airlines plane with a man who first tested positive.
We are now calling upon all those who travelled to Dubai in the last 2 weeks to call our health desk so that we can have them checked.
Uganda has so far quarantined over 2,000 people who travelled from high-risk countries. However, all the 9 COVID-19 cases in the country came from Dubai, which was not considered to be one of them.
The numbers that were being reported on the international situation report did not show Dubai as a high-risk country. But from what we are seeing, we are not sure whether what was being reported was the truth.
Uganda has since closed its borders to incoming or outgoing international travellers, except cargo and emergency landings. The country has also banned all public gatherings, closed schools, centres of worship, bars and nightclubs for 1 month. Security agencies in the country have already arrested dozens of people who violated the guidelines issued by the government. Isabel Nakiria, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Meanwhile, Kenya has received 100,000 masks from the Jack Ma Foundation. The masks, together with 20,000 test kits and 1,000 items of protective gear, landed in the country on Tuesday. The donation is part of efforts aimed at preventing the spread of the coronavirus. The resources will immediately be put to use, with priority given to those working in isolation centres. All 54 African countries are set to benefit from the donation of the Chinese billionaire and Alibaba co-founder Jack Ma. A total of 1.1 million testing kits, 6 million masks and 60,000 medical use protective suits and face shields will be provided to Africa.
We have received 20,000 test kits from the Jack Ma Foundation and assorted personal protective equipment, which will quickly be able to deploy to our Emergency Operations Center, the isolation unit in Bagabi and Kenyatta National Hospital, and the counties to be able to support more patients for COVID-19 care.
Chinese authorities say they will lift many of the restrictions on travel in and out of Hubei province from Wednesday. The decision excludes Wuhan, that's the provincial capital and the epicenter of China's coronavirus outbreak. People inside Wuhan will be able to leave the city from April the 8th. In fact, transport and express deliveries in Wuhan are already back in business. Our reporter, Tang Bo, is in Wuhan and tells us more.
As the epidemic in China has been largely kept under control, Wuhan has started to restore the city operation, including public transportation, delivery services, and some automotive manufacturing. And as far as I know, some airports outside Wuhan are expected to reopen on March the 25th, which is on Wednesday tomorrow. And also people in Wuhan would have to go through a real name registration before they take public transportation like buses and subway trains and take taxis. And also Wuhan's bus companies have already offered this door-to-door public transportation services for employees of some major enterprises in the city. And also, the companies have already started the trial operations of over 100 bus routes. Delivery services in the city also resumed its operation with an explosive growth in the number of orders. So the city of Wuhan and also the province of Hubei are now gradually getting back on its track.
Well, we're going to a short break now. Lots more to come. Don't go away.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
As we continue our coverage on the COVID-19 pandemic in Africa and beyond, CGTN has prepared a series of features exploring its implications on the African continent. We continue our series today looking at the impact of COVID-19 on travel. Here's CGTN's Lindy Mtongana.
Yes, indeed. The airport is the main port of entry for large numbers of travelers from across the globe. Our reporters in Kenya and Ethiopia sought to find out how COVID-19 is impacting this important sector. Now, despite the challenges posed by the COVID-19 outbreak, Ethiopian Airlines continues to connect its customers globally, including through its 35 weekly flights to China. But how is the airline keeping its passengers and crew safe? Well, CGTN's Girum Chala got exclusive access to the Ethiopian Airlines operations hub and filed this special report.
It's business as usual here at Addis Ababa Bole International Airport. Almost all flights from Ethiopian Airlines, major destinations from Europe, America and China have touched down. In a normal scenario, after disembarking from the plane, passengers line up at the customs. But now more measures have been put in place. So let's see where these passengers are headed now. And the first thing to do is to get registered. These passengers need to also tell all of these people, the health workers, where they came from so that the health workers can establish the whereabouts. Everyone that comes in and out of the airport gets a temperature test through manual and computer-assisted device, as can be seen here. This is due to the coronavirus outbreak. And as I have also stepped into the airport, I have to get checked as well. Thank you. The screening is also done on all crew, but this is not all. All aircrafts which arrive from corona-affected destinations get disinfected before they fly again.
The prevention is done in accordance with the guidelines prescribed by authorities, and that has been done not only from Addis but from origin. The passengers will be checked for their temperature upon departure, and then they will also be inspected on board. And when they arrive, they will be tested upon disembarkation of the aircraft. And then again, when they enter into the terminal, they will be checked for again to assess their temperature. And then again, once they transfer, if they are transfer passengers, they will be going direct to the transfer area. If they are entering into the country, there is another control, which they would be required to fill a form to be submitted to the Public Health Institute officers, and then they would be under follow-up for 2 weeks.
I think there's whatever in China, maybe in Beijing and the Ethiopian, maybe in this city, do some more work to prevent the COVID-19, and thanks to the government for doing this one to protect the people's health like this.
It's amazing. I should say that all international airports should have the screening methods, and maybe to prevent the coronavirus from getting in.
I think this is the normal policy for the control the coronavirus, and this is good things for passengers to control this, not spread the virus to everybody. Yeah. I think this is good.
On average, Bole International Airport serves at least 29,000 passengers daily.
The decision to fly to China comes after evaluating the assessment and the conditions. Stopping flight to China doesn't paramount to preventing the disease, the virus disease. So what we do is we do all precaution measures, and we continue to fly China.
The world is a global village, and movement is inevitable. Therefore, containing global epidemic outbreaks is increasingly becoming a challenge. It is then critical to take such precautionary measures to ensure safety of travelers all over the world. Group Jala CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Ride-sharing apps have gained popularity in Africa, with scores of customers using the services to get from point A to point B. But how exposed are drivers to the coronavirus? CGTN's Astatal was on the ground when the first case in Kenya was confirmed. She followed up with the driver to get his real-time reaction to the development.
On March 13th, Kenya confirmed its first case of COVID-19. Kenyans and millions of Africans use ride-sharing apps. Drivers interact with many passengers throughout their day. Let's order a ride and see if they're taking any precautions. Hi, Ken. Yes, I'm right here, right before the main road. You should see me. Okay, all right. See you soon.
Hi, Ken. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sure you've heard about COVID-19. How have you been feeling about the developments?
I've heard of it. It's spread in different countries. At least recently we just heard it's now in Kenya. So it's kind of scary now.
Are airport trips a big earner for you?
Yeah, okay. For us, we take them like long trips, which at least give us good earnings.
And will you stop going to the airport now that there's a case confirmed in Kenya?
At the moment, yes, I need the money, but because of the disease, I'm kind of afraid. I'll limit my trips to the airport.
So, typically, how many times do you wash the car?
Okay, like on my case, I always clean it like on a daily basis, the general car wash. But for the sanitizers, we haven't tried it yet. But now that the case has been reported in Kenya, I'm going to be doing it like on a daily basis, or each time I pick a new client. See, it's so scary because we all have families back at home, and you see like the kind of job that I do, I have to be out here to work so that I feed my family. And back at home, you see, if I'm affected, it will basically scramble my financial life, and I'll not be able to like feed my family.
Like Ken, many of us use cars to get around in our daily lives. Here are some measures you can take as a driver and passenger. Cars have many frequently touched surfaces. These include door handles, steering wheels, dashboard controls, passenger and driver door armrest. To clean your car interior, you will need disposable gloves and a microfiber cloth. Soap and water can still be used to clean your car. For sensitive surfaces like touchscreens, automakers like Toyota advise to use bleach-free wipes with at least 70% alcohol in them. When cleaning your car upholstery, experts suggest lightly agitating the fabric with a small amount of water and laundry detergent. If you're a passenger in a taxi or a car, you can also take measures to protect yourself. If you want to avoid touching surfaces like door handles, you can use a tissue. For general safety, security experts advise sitting directly behind a driver. In the event your driver coughs or sneezes, you're less likely to have droplets land on you. It's advised to use hand sanitizer or soap and water to keep your hands clean before, during, and after the ride. Astatal, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Meanwhile, Kenya's transport authorities have called on operators to ensure the safety of the millions of Kenyans who use public transport every day. CGTN's Astatal spoke to one such public service vehicle operator.
As COVID-19 spreads around the world, governments are looking at the risk posed by public transportation. Here in Kenya, millions of people use buses, locally referred to as matatus, to get around. The Kenyan government has published a list of directives for matatus to follow to ensure the safety of passengers and drivers. Let's see what the reality is like on the ground. The directive published by the Kenyan government stated that matatus are meant to be washed and disinfected twice a day. Sanitizers are also meant to be made available to passengers. In the capital, Nairobi, matatus are complying with some of the measures.
The challenge is on follow-ups. I have to supervise whoever is on duty to know whether they have done it or not.
According to Abdi, the buses are fully disinfected and washed at night.
We were lucky to get the chemicals. You have seen the containers, we have enough, so I can't say it's a challenge to get them. We got them and we were lucky. But I don't know if we are going to be getting them in the future. We have them right now, but in the coming days, like next week, I don't know whether we will find them.
On board one of the Super Metro matatus, Peter Urungu, a driver, takes measures to protect himself and his colleagues.
As drivers, we use this sanitizer to wash hands. When you board, you wash your hands. When you alight and swap with another driver, you wash your hands. Spray the steering wheel, on the handles, glass surfaces and door locks, because when swapping shifts, maybe someone did not wash their hands, then they leave the bacteria on the steering, and then you come and touch it. So when you get in, you wash your hands and put the sanitizer back.
On board, passengers have mixed reactions to the spread of COVID-19.
Okay, we fear about it because I don't know who is sitting next to me. I don't know whether he's having corona or what. I don't know how safety he is, so we are afraid of it.
We are a bit worried but we have a confidence that the government will work on it.
While some passengers continue to use matatus, as more cases get reported in Kenya, business has been affected.
There is no work. It's very little. Initially the buses made money, but not now. The flow of passengers is very low. There are very few passengers.
Social distance.
On March 22nd, Kenya's Cabinet Secretary for Health underscored the importance for buses and trains to follow a directive published a day after we finished filming.
All public service vehicles must adhere to the directive issued on Friday, March the 20th, failure to which the respective SACCO licenses will be revoked.
On a follow-up call, Abdi explained while Super Metro is now following the new guideline, they've had to increase the fare in order to compensate for carrying less passengers. Since its launch, Kenya's standard gauge railway continues to carry passengers and goods through various counties. And as COVID-19 spreads, SGR has taken special measures, from screening passengers' temperatures to making sanitizer readily available.
Yes, the station we are disinfecting very early in the morning before the passengers come in. We are making sure that the station is disinfected. And then most of our passengers start coming in the stations from around 11 o'clock. That's Nairobi and Mombasa for the main stations. So we ensure that we disinfect the stations once more. Later in the evening, because then we do have passengers coming in, both in Nairobi and Mombasa, we disinfect it, and then back the following day for the same cycle of carrying out the cleaning and the disinfecting the stations.
If a passenger records a fever, they're isolated in a separate cabin. The trained instructor then takes charge to ensure the proper measures are being followed.
After that, I'll just communicate to the office in Nairobi of the situation. And along the way to Mombasa, maybe in Jande, we have intermediate stations along the way. So they will make a stop in the next intermediate station, and an ambulance will be at a platform and it will be transferred to the hospital.
Staff on the SGR handle many passengers with each trip. The SGR has made sure they're properly equipped to safely provide the necessary services to customers.
For the staff, we've made sure that all the staff pass through the same entrance where the screening of the temperature is done in the morning by the security people and the people from health. And for the staff, we provided them with masks and gloves each and every day. And for passenger service department, we also have the temperature scanning machine so that I can scan my staff after every 1 hour to ensure they are okay.
At the end of each trip, trains are properly fumigated and disinfected. Surfaces are wiped during and after each trip. SGR's managing company, Africa Star Railway Operations, also remains in close contact with government bodies to ensure their guidelines remain up to date.
We are also working very closely with the county governments, both Nairobi, Voi, and in Mombasa. And in fact, in Mombasa, in the committee crisis meeting, we have representation in the committee so that we are able to deliberate, give an update, and we are able to be informed of the status and what other measures that we need to put through to assist and ensuring that we ensure that the virus does not spread.
Among their updated measures is respecting the Kenyan government's guideline to ensure that trains are only operating at 60% capacity in an effort to practice social distancing. Astatal, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
In today's Voices of the People segment, we find out how Africans are protecting themselves from getting infected.
I put water and soap outside my home to protect my family from coronavirus. Everybody washes their hands, from my wife, my kids, to all my visitors.
I wash my hands and I use hand sanitizers all the time. So that's how I prevent it.
I'm trying, at least in the public places where I go, restaurants, sanitize as much as I can,
make sure even when I cough, I'm like, oh, I take control measures, do my natural remedy of take the garlic.
My name is Melanie Verwoerd. I'm a former Member of Parliament for the ANC in South Africa. I've also been South Africa's ambassador to Ireland, and I worked for UNICEF as Executive Director in Ireland for a couple of years. For the last week and a half, my family and I have lived with the COVID-19 virus, or coronavirus as they call it. My daughter first contracted it a week and a half ago. We think from foreign guests that we engaged with, we don't know. And my son was then diagnosed positive with it as well shortly afterwards. I'm still waiting for my test results, but we're presuming that it's positive since I had all the same symptoms as them. We, of course, immediately isolated ourselves. We did not have any contact with people at all. So for the last 2 weeks, we have been on our own, or week and a half, since we became ill, even before we got the tests. My daughter in particular was very, very ill. She developed a very high fever, over 39 degrees for 4 days. She developed a very bad cough, tight chest. We also, for all of us, the disease started with diarrhea. And we also lost our sense of smell and taste. But I think it's very important for people to realize that the symptoms can differ very much. My son and I, for example, had a sore throat, but had no fever. I felt like I had a very bad cold. He didn't even have those symptoms, and yet he was positive. So it's very important to realize that the symptoms can differ vastly, depending on how strong your immune system is. And I think that's the big takeaway for us. This is the big thing that we've learned in the last week and a half. We have to stand together now as people in our communities. And as Africans, we are good at that. We do like to take care of one another. In South Africa, we talk a lot about Ubuntu. And this is what we really need to be good at the moment. Even though we shouldn't physically touch people, even though we shouldn't be very close to people if they are sick, we still need to take care of one another. We need to make sure that we know where there's elderly people that they are okay. We need to give our neighbors who are sick, we have to leave them food at their doors. We need to make sure that we don't now turn on one another, but in fact that we actually start taking care of one another.
How much do you know about COVID-19 and the precautionary measures to take? Well, join us tomorrow as we explore matters of public awareness. Back to you in studio.
Thank you, Lindy. Join us again tomorrow as we continue with our coverage. Africa battles COVID-19. Well, let's now go to Rama. He's got all the business news for us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Karen. Here's what's coming up in business. South African authorities are racing to finalize a stimulus package for Africa's most industrialized economy. And we'll explore how businesses in Uganda are changing their logistics chains as the pandemic is forcing millions to stay at home. Welcome back. South Africa's economic output shrunk in the second half of 2019. And now with the COVID-19 pandemic in place, some are forecasting an even deeper contraction this year, anywhere between 1.8% all the way to 7% at one extreme. The country's president has announced a 21-day lockdown effective from the 26th of March, but a fiscal support package for businesses is still being worked on. With the details, here's CGTN's Angelo Coppola.
The government's hands are tied. It doesn't have many options other than adjusting interest rates.
What's needed is not just sort of a modest stimulus, interest rate adjustment, and so far that's what's been going on. Is the interest rate adjustments have actually been relatively modest, and the fiscal stimulus has been very, very muted. Now, South Africa doesn't have a lot of wiggle room when it comes to fiscal stimulus, for the simple reason that all of our dry powder is now wet. You know, we spent the money.
Business leaders say attention needs to be focused on small and medium enterprises.
Those people need to retain critical human capital for the recovery, yet there's no income for them. So we think that government must come with significant relief for SMME sector, which they can tap into for working capital.
Economists are telling government that they have to be more bold.
The extent of the stimulus that is needed is a 2+% of GDP, which would mean South Africa needs to throw into the economy at least 100 billion in stimulus. And that's leaving aside the interest rate moves of last week. So, you know, what we've seen so far has been little more than, you know, really fiddling around the fringes in terms of policy proposals.
The instrument that government can use at the level of the Reserve Bank, at a monetary level, is interest rates. The Reserve Bank went on a limb and cut interest rates by 100 basis points, 1%. That's aggressive for our Reserve Bank. Probably needs to do more than that.
Not everyone agrees that the rate cuts will entirely solve the problem.
Interest rates have been cut by 1%. Now, that doesn't really change the cash flow of many businesses, and in particular, it has almost no impact on the cash flow of vulnerable businesses. So the interest rate adjustment is all good and well. It might in ordinary times give you some type of relief and stimulus. These aren't ordinary times, and unordinary policy is needed.
If the government doesn't come up with a sustainable economic stimulus package, then the economy in this country is doomed to failure, and it's going to take years to recover. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Now, many an African state has suspended flights, closed schools, closed airports and banned large gatherings in order to contain this COVID-19 pandemic. Things haven't been easy, though, for many of them, as most people do depend on day-to-day jobs in the informal sector for their livelihood. Rwanda has seen a spike in infections, and it is among the countries that have implemented some rather drastic measures. Here's CGTN's Alexandre Majala with the details.
COVID-19 infections in Africa are rising fast, and hospitals are ill-equipped to cope. Governments are taking unprecedented measures to contain the spread of the novel virus. In East Africa, Rwanda went into total lockdown after reporting 17 confirmed cases, the highest number in the region. The nation banned all unnecessary movements, excusing trips for healthcare, food, or banking. So far, public gatherings have been banned, schools, churches, mosques, and bars have been shut down, and airports closed. The landlocked nation is also closing its borders completely, except for goods, cargo, and returning citizens. Anyone arriving in Rwanda will be subject to a 14-day quarantine at designated locations. However, some businesses considered essential have remained open.
My shop is going to stay open because I'm dealing with things that are going in with sanitary that can help people in their lives. Even that we can prevent since this virus has come to our country. So I think that's why our shops are going to be open.
While most streets remain deserted, some trading centers saw a rush as Rwandans stockpiled food, anticipating a long wait indoors.
What I can say for me, my shop is open, and my colleague, she is not open. So whereby she can be affected, I think we can help each other.
A 2016 analysis by the RAND Corporation, a U.S. think tank, found that of the 25 countries in the world that were most vulnerable to infectious outbreaks, 22 were in Africa. The others were Afghanistan, Yemen, and Haiti. After lagging behind the global curve for coronavirus infections and deaths, Africa has seen a sudden rise in cases over recent days. Eritrea, Uganda, Angola have joined the growing list of African nations to confirm their first cases, while Tanzania, Ethiopia, Kenya, and Mauritius have announced more cases. The continent has now reported more than 1,100 infections, with more than 1,000 of them in sub-Saharan Africa. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization expresses concern that poor sanitation, urban crowding, the lack of intensive care units, equipment and trained staff could hamper any response in most of the continent. Alexandria Majala for CGTN.
Still in East Africa, authorities in Uganda are encouraging people to stay at home as part of a range of efforts to contain this pandemic. So far, the East African countries confirmed at least 9 cases of people infected with this virus, but many fear that number will inevitably rise as local businesses scramble to adopt contactless delivery systems. CGTN's Hilary Ayesiga filed this report from Kampala.
Henry Liwega is a courier at an online marketplace, Jumia, Uganda. He's been instructed to keep a 1-meter distance from all customers.
You can put the item on the doorstep, then the customer comes, verifies the item. After verifying, he or she puts the money at the doorstep, and you are supposed to come, pick the money from the doorstep, then you step back and the customer steps back.
Using this method, employers hope to keep their staff and customers safe.
We want to minimize the risk of contact, minimize the risk of transmission between us and the customer and vice versa. And so we encourage customers to pay cashless, and we're able to take an item, deliver to your premise without touching you in a safe manner.
Uganda is currently on a partial lockdown because of coronavirus. And for those who want to buy products while at home, this online shop is increasingly becoming an option. The company has also taken other measures to contain the virus, such as regular temperature checks. The Uganda government has issued guidelines on how to stay safe. They include anyone with a flu-like symptom is required to seek treatment, wear a mask, and stay at home. It's hoped that if these measures are complied with, many Ugandans could be saved from contracting the disease. Hilary Ayesiga, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
One last story for you in this segment. Tunisia started negotiations with the International Monetary Fund on a new loan program. The North African economy, as you will recall, signed a deal with the IMF back in December 2016 for a near $3 billion loan that was designed to give authorities a breathing room to implement some much-needed economic reforms. The fund disbursed about $250 million in an installment from that deal in June last year. But since then, negotiations on the disbursement of a 6th installment have stalled due to a political crisis following last year's election, as well as the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, which has decimated Tunisia's tourism sector. And I'll leave you there for the time being. But I'll be back at the top of the hour. In global business, governments are turning to different kinds of monetary and fiscal stimulus to keep the economies afloat as this pandemic pretty much shuts down everything. We'll be looking at some of those measures in different countries across the continent at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, back to Karen.
Thank you very much, Rama. Well, we are going to a short break now. We've got all the sport coming up, including Japan and IOC agreed to postpone 2020 Olympics to summer 2021.
How would you create your legend? On the fields,